In April of 2003, I found myself in a fighting hole facing north along this highway, Highway 7, the main avenue of approach for the American forces during the initial days of the invasion of Iraq. I was terrified, we were hungry, and we were exhausted. We had just survived one of the worst ambushes in the early days of the war in a place called Nasiriyah. I was a Marine in 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. And at this time in southern Iraq, it was one of the most poor, desperate places on earth. There was no access to health care, no access to clean water, education services, or food for the people. And I saw what was happening was, as we advanced north, the regular Iraqi army was retreating to make a final stand in Baghdad. And meanwhile, Saddam was putting his Fedayeen forces south, and he was going hut to hut in these rural villages, coercing poor farmers to fight us. Basically saying, look, we'll drop a bag of rice off at your hut if you'll pick up this weapon and go fight these guys 10 miles south of here. And we were fighting these guys by the hundreds and thousands. That really set the stage for that morning on the road in Highway 7. I got up out of my fighting hole and I wanted to walk the lines to check on my guys because we were all scared. And I looked up and I saw a small white car approaching from the north. Well, they just started using suicide bombing techniques. I thought they were packing the car full of explosives that they would blow themselves up. So I grabbed 3 of my guys, and we took off running to try to stop this car. I fired a warning shot across the hood. Finally, the car stopped about 50 meters out. The driver jumped out, starts waving his arms frantically and sprinting at us. So now I think this guy strapped himself with explosives. He's going to blow himself up. So I'm yelling at him in Arabic, trying to get him to get on the ground, and he's not stopping. I raise my weapon, thinking I'm going to have to take out this guy, and I look behind his car, and I see a large black military truck roll up behind his little car. 6 guys in black jump out of the truck, run up to his car, and begin shooting into the car. This guy stopped dead in his tracks, turned around, started screaming, and running back to the car. And that's when I realized what was happening. This guy was one of those poor farmers who was just trying to escape across our lines with his family. So I yelled at my guys and told them to take out the Fedayeen, and I ran as fast as I could to try to save this guy's family. But by the time I got there, I was too late. I looked in the passenger side, and his wife was shot in the face and in the chest. She was slumped over dead. He had a little baby girl in the back seat whose arm had been shot off, and she'd been shot in the face multiple times. And he was cradling the body of his little 6-year-old daughter who'd been shot in the stomach, and she was choking on her own blood. This guy lost everything he had in this world in 2 seconds. And for the first time in the war, everything slowed down for me. And I put myself in this guy's shoes. I asked myself, you know, I live in a world of choices. Where do I want to go to school? Where do I want my kids to grow up? What do I want to wear tomorrow? What were this guy's choices when he woke up this morning? He could watch his kids starve to death. He could strap a bomb to himself, come blow himself up. He could make some desperate attempt to cross our lines. And then I got really, really angry. This was not fair. It wasn't fair that the GPS coordinates of someone's birthplace could dictate the choices they have in this world. And I had an awakening experience that really put me on a different path in life. I thought that maybe, just maybe, I can have even more of an impact in the war on terror if I take on that desperation, if I take on what I believe is one of the leading contributors to the spread, the proliferation of terrorism, insurgency, and general global instability, which is extreme poverty. So I made one of the toughest decisions I ever had to make in my life. I left my guys. Many of them are still fighting there bravely. And they cheered me on. They said, hey, sir, go get them. We saw the same thing. You can make a difference. And as I got out, I decided to build a company, build an organization that could really scale and have an impact in the fight. I didn't want to build just a little nonprofit that was going to help a couple villages. You see, I had left everything I knew in this world on this new journey. I wanted to make a global impact. So I decided to go to business school to build a company that could scale. And I applied to Stanford and Harvard, and by some miracle of God, got into Stanford. Chose Stanford because of the focus on social innovation and entrepreneurship. And a really amazing thing happened when I was there. 30 of my classmates got involved to help me build the business plan, the financial model, the marketing plan, the fundraising team. 6 faculty members provided seed funding and ideas and mentorship. And then when I graduated in June of '08, I hired the little team that I've been recruiting and moved to one of the poorest areas in all of Kenya to start our pilot project for what became known as Nuru International, a radical, new, innovative approach to fighting extreme poverty. In the last 5 years, we have done a lot of R&D, trying many different things, innovating on this model, and now we've created a solid approach that we believe could be a real game changer in the fight against extreme poverty and giving people choices. Now there's over 30,000 people in Kenya and Ethiopia that are lifting themselves out of extreme poverty, not for a year or 2 years, but forever, permanently. And before I talk about what we do at Nuru, I want to start by talking about the problem. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as those living on less than $1.25 a day. What Nuru is trying to do, we're trying to change the whole conversation here. Because what I found is this is a very limiting definition that leads to material-based solutions that simply do not last. So I kept digging in my research, and I came across these two guys, Mahbub al-Haq, who used to be the Minister of Finance in Pakistan, and Amartya Sen, a Nobel Prize-winning economist. You see, these guys believe that poverty is actually a lack of meaningful choices for basic human rights. Now, this made a lot more sense to me. This is the poverty that I saw in the eyes of that man on Highway 7. This is the definition that I decided I wanted to take on. And you know, when you use this definition, your goal was not number of bags of grain distributed, or number of wells drilled, or number of schools built. Your goal becomes number of leaders who are equipped to make choices, who are empowered to make those choices, who have an enabling environment where they can act on those choices once they are decided upon. So I want to talk about 4 key lessons that I've learned on the front lines of the combat against extreme poverty that are really shaping the way that we approach this fight. Lesson number 1, instead of asking what is the solution to poverty, start by asking who. You see, I found that in this fight, the most important resource in fighting extreme poverty are those trapped in poverty themselves. These guys are way more capable, way more intelligent, way more resourceful than I will ever be. They have survived things that I, with all my special operations training, never could have survived. They're amazing individuals, and if we can empower them with the ability to design solutions, they can be way more lasting because they will own these solutions. Lesson number 2, instead of coming in with prefabricated solutions and force-fitting them into communities, start by asking questions around 4 key needs in these communities: hunger, inability of families to cope with economic shocks, preventable disease and death, and lack of quality education for children. You see, integrated models make sense if you just increase crop yields to fight hunger. Those kids still die from malaria or waterborne illnesses, and they have no schools to go to. If you have an integrated approach, you can lift the communities out permanently so they can stay out of the poverty trap. Once the needs are understood, our 3rd lesson comes in. We research the very best ideas out there that are already working in fighting these 4 problems, because there's a lot of great ideas that are working. We put those ideas, we package them, and we put them in front of the local leaders that we are working with, and we wrestle with the pros and cons of these ideas, evaluating them against 3 set criteria. Do they create impact? Can they scale? And are they sustainable? Then they choose the solutions that will work best in their area. There's far more ownership this way. But it's not just enough to create an integrated solution to fighting poverty. You see, there's a lot of people that do that, but no one has figured out how to sustain and scale it. And that's where our 4th lesson comes in, and we figured that piece out too. We build a sustainability engine. You see, Nuru wants to go into these communities and over a 7-year period build a model that's fighting poverty, turn it over to the locals, and then we exit, leaving behind a completely self-sustaining entity that's continuing to scale to end poverty throughout all the remote rural areas of that nation. And we do this by focusing on 2 programs in our engine. We believe that to fuel an engine, you need 2 key fuels: people and capital. Our first program is our leadership program. Over the last 3 years, we've done R&D to really refine a process and a curriculum to empower local leaders to understand needs in their communities, design solutions to meet those needs, implement and scale those solutions, and then innovate past challenges on their own after we have gone. This way, they can really own these solutions. They understand how they were built, so they can also fix them when they're broken. Our second piece of the engine is financial sustainability. We build a for-profit company in these countries so that it's not relying on donations anymore. Over the 7 years, we dump in seed capital, provide mentorship and advice to these local entrepreneurs running these companies so they become profitable, and those profits are used to fund the poverty-fighting solutions as they scale nationwide. And we're at a really exciting time right now in Nuru. We're 5 years in to our 7-year proof of concept. And once I prove this model, I want to scale it globally. I want to get out there. I want to open source our technology. I want to share it with governments, other organizations, teach them how to adopt these practices. Because I need to get this model out there as fast as I can to get it to more people, empower more people with choices. And a lot of people ask me a lot, what is the urgency, man? You're so aggressive. You're so passionate about this. You're really out there all the time. Why don't you just slow down? You see, I think that this problem, extreme poverty, is the greatest crisis of our time. I want to share a statistic with you that is near and dear to my heart. 1.3 million Americans have lost their lives over the last 237 years of history in the United States. But there are more people dying from extreme poverty every single month. That is a staggering statistic. But this is a problem that is eminently solvable in our time. You see, what I've seen when I've surveyed the sector and done my research and R&D in the field is we have put a glass ceiling on this problem of extreme poverty. I see organizations and governments fighting to see who can get as close to the glass ceiling as possible, but nobody believes we can actually break through it. To solve this problem, and we can solve it, we have to first believe that it can be solved. We can break through that glass ceiling, but everyone needs to get in the fight. So I want to end my presentation here with a quote from one of my favorite people, President Roosevelt. It's not the critic that counts, not the man who points out where the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and falls short again and again, because there is not effort without error and shortcoming, who knows the great devotion, the great enthusiasm, who gives himself in a worthy cause, who in the end, at best, if he succeeds, knows the triumph of high achievement. And at worst, if he fails, well, at least he fails while daring greatly. So his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Extreme poverty is the greatest crisis of our time. And I encourage everyone here in this room today, step into the arena with us. Because 1.4 billion of our brothers and sisters around the world are waiting for us to join them. Thank you.